I think that stripping down and simplifying your life is great. It creates margin. But you have to realize just because you evicted something that's old, if you do not put something in there intentionally that is rooted in truth, culture and the world will give you something to fill it with.
Welcome to the Experience Miracles podcast, where we help parents find hope, answers, and drug-free help to overcome your child's chronic health challenges. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, and I'll be sharing my experiences as both a dad and a doctor on every episode. I can take the latest science and neurology of healing and break it down in the most simple and relatable way possible. We'll take on the toughest topics and answer your biggest questions through interviews with other amazing parents and leading experts, leaving you with practical action steps that you can take to help your child heal and thrive. It's time to expect and experience miracles. Let's get started. Hey parents, you are about to have your life transformed once again with this episode of the Experience Miracles podcast. Our dear friend Courtney joins us, and this interview, Courtney has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to health and wellness, and she lives a fully vibrant, fully fit, this woman rocks it when it comes to diet and nutrition and living healthy in all the things that would show up on a list of things to do. And we don't talk about that on this episode of the Experience Miracles podcast. Instead, we talk about the foundational changes that we need to make and get to make as parents to truly transform the health and the happiness and the full expression of life for our kids and for ourselves. This episode is unlike any other one, with how immediately, as soon as the interview turns on with Courtney here, you're going to see she just takes us right into real life lessons that she has learned with her three girls as to what really actually does build health. So you're not going to get the standard list. You're not going to get the standard black and white list, add this food, change this diet, take this supplement, do this workout. That's everywhere else on the internet. That's on everybody else's podcast. This podcast episode right here with Courtney, better known, but definitely known as Organic Blondie on Instagram, and Rockstar podcast host with two of our other dear friends, Dr. Josh Axe and Dr. Chris Motley with the Health Institute. We will provide the links to where you can get connected with Courtney after this episode, but carve out the time, moms, carve out the time, parents, to really let this one soak into your soul, because that is where Courtney and myself are coming for, and what we're coming for in the best of ways you're about to hear on this episode of the Experience Miracles podcast. Sit back, soak it up, really be open to it, and get ready to find the right in front of us, for all of us, foundational, transformational changes you can make for your family to experience miracles. All right, everyone, here we are officially rocking and rolling with Organic Blondie. I don't know, we've known each other for quite a few years. I would like to think, because you're such an awesome, incredible person, that we've achieved besties status, but I don't know if we're there yet. I don't really know.
I think that's a safe bet. We're in a good place now.
I think so. Yeah. And our whole teams, every time we get together, we get to jam every 90 days through our Leaders Mastermind and our holistic natural health crew that we love. And it's our two teams just immediately within 3 minutes of being in the room. We're talking with you, we're all hanging out, and we, try and get as much extra time. And everybody out there listening, the reason I give that, kind of additional part to Courtney's intro is that's how you're going to feel after this. You're going to feel like you've known this woman forever. You're going to feel like, goodness gracious, like this is such a helpful, impactful person who really speaks from our favorite place here on the Experience Miracles podcast, which is real life. Yes, Courtney loves to read and research and study and hang around other great, influencers like her homies, Dr. Axe and Dr. Motley, but this woman is a wealth of knowledge. And so I know your story has taken, quite a few different chapters into this natural health world for yourself, but also I know that your girlies and your kiddos mean the world to you, like they do for all of us. So you talk a lot about on your content about all the different components with your health and your fitness and your journey and your slight obsession with peptides. Okay, I just think that one in there. But what I want to pull out of you is that story. And then also, as you've made this journey, so if you could go back and really give us all the way back to growing up on a farm, we connect about that.
Yeah.
Did that have any influence on your journey of what we're going to talk about today, which is raising healthy kids naturally, being a healthy, empowered parent, and then also, this is later on here we're going to get into, but like trying to get back to some of our farmer principles of simplicity, right? So as you've gone through your story, what are the components that you think are so impactful for not just you, but your kids, and where you really became passionate about making sure they're empowered, they're healthy, they're living their best life?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Tony, for having me on. Guys, I'm just elated to be here with you. And I hope that you do feel like you're kind of sitting in the room with a friend. So if you're a mom and you've got kids, you're out walking, maybe you're pushing a stroller, maybe you're going to the grocery store, whatever you're doing, hopefully you hear my heart from this, because the last thing I want to do is ever really sit on a pedestal where I feel like I've got it all figured out. Just like you, in so many ways, I'm in process. I'm in process with my kids. I'm in process in my spiritual walk. I'm in process find just really my identity and my purpose, because we're always moving, growing, hopefully, right? And so I very much am coming to you as a sister, and think about it in that way, because what I want to share with you today, and I hope that it serves you, are just things I've learned along the way. And I really feel like we do miss this element of community, because we live in these isolated worlds where really the only connection for many of us is through technology, and you're not getting a real picture of somebody's life. Even if you were to go to my Instagram, you're getting little snapshots here and there, but you're not seeing the down and dirty in the trenches day to day. And that's where life is happening. So I don't even want to sugarcoat a lot of things, because I don't even, my life is raw. Like, I'm still figuring a lot out. But what has been such a encouragement to me is being connected with like-minded people like the Ebles and all the people at the Health Institute. I've just grown so much. And ultimately, like, just loving the process of growing. And I think that to me has been something that I had to cultivate, because I always felt like I couldn't start enjoying things until I got somewhere, till I got to a certain place. And then I thought, okay, now I can enjoy my kids, because I don't feel like they're stealing all my time. So I'm territorial of my time, and I'm bitter and resentful when somebody asks me to do something, because I think everybody's been taking all the time. So I now have a different picture of that, of I get to serve my family, I get to serve my kids. And you know what? Even when it's hard, those are opportunities for me to learn. And when I learn something, now I have a tool that I can go share with somebody else. So I'm actually more grateful now for the bumps in the road, because I think, God, what are you showing me right now? What is it that I need to learn from this experience? And you will value the lesson learned from that so much more, because you'll think, man, I never would have seen that. I never would have knew that had I not have walked through it and had to question myself, and then also observe my reaction and behavior and think, was that an appropriate response? How did I get here? And that's where the growth really happens. And so I've really kind of in this stage where there's a lot more awareness than I've had. And hopefully that is just an indication of maturity, right? We all, age is just a number, really. Like, you don't get wise because you get old. Like, you may be old, but you may not have an ounce of wisdom in your body if you haven't been able to have enough awareness to understand how the choices day to day are influencing the reality that you're experiencing. So I think that for many of us, if you're on this journey and you're trying to find solutions for your kids and your family, and maybe you're running into some roadblocks, let this be an encouragement that goes forth to you, that in those roadblocks, even by listening to podcasts and trying to connect with real truth and wisdom, you are in a process of growth. And that doesn't always feel well. It doesn't feel well when things are being stripped out. It doesn't feel well when things are getting pruned. But I promise you that it will lead to a greater harvest if you embrace the process. So as we kind of go through this podcast, I'm hopeful that you're able to evaluate your specific process that you're in right now, because if we can get you to help us understand how to change the way we're looking at it, I promise you, you can start to experience a different reality. The circumstances may look exactly the same, but the way that you start to walk into the purpose of that season, it will radically change. And I'm telling you, if it changes for you, it will change for your children. And this is the thing that is so important. I think a lot of times we want to pull the puppet strings of, okay, well, they need to have this specific herb and regimen and diet and, 30 minutes on screen time. And we're trying to control all the little variables, all the externals in their life. But we don't evaluate the behaviors that we're doing, that we're coping with, right? Now, I interviewed Dr. Caroline Leaf, a few months ago. She's a brilliant neuroscientist. She's written several books. And I remember one thing that she said, and it's resonated with me. And she said, before I ever address children, I always address the parents. Because if I can't get the parents to change the behavior that they're modeling to their children, we will never see the change that we're desiring for the children. And I thought, that's so simple. It makes so much sense. But I can't even control my impulsivities to go through social media and scroll for the dopamine hits. Why am I now looking at my children and I'm frustrated that they can't control their impulsivity? It looks different. It looks different for adults than it does for children, but we are demonizing the children when we're in fact utilizing the exact same mechanisms to medicate our souls, because we would rather avoid pain so that we don't have to deal with the things that have hurt us in the past. We'll avoid it and think that that's peace. When in reality, we are now creating toxic cycles within our homes. And then we're starting to approach those externals of thinking, okay, well, what are they doing? And what are they doing? And they got this, neurofeedback and they got this. And I'm not demonizing any of that. I think that it can be helpful, but they shouldn't be the first thing we go to.
No, that is just pure unadulterated truth. And I love that. You just recorded the greatest description of the Experience Miracles podcast ever. That first set of statements right there is to the T. Literally, we were joking, that's my favorite word, right? It is the description. It's the goal. It's it's where the Experience Miracles podcast was born from, because the truth of the matter is, when we as parents are looking to distract ourselves or dilute our experience or not really learn from our experience and not really move forward ourselves, because we've been so consumed not only by the craziness and the chaos and the toxicity of the world, but it actually gets way harder when your kids do struggle. But that right there is your greatest opportunity to heal your whole family, because we get asked this question all the time, Courtney. It's like, hey, does this stuff work for me too? It's a parent asking this question, right? It's like a mom or a dad. Does this stuff work for me too? And my answer is always it works wonderfully for you. And in fact, we need it to work for you to get it to work all the way through to your child, because a family is a family. And so we called it is the Experience Miracles podcast, because when you do a podcast like this, and that's why we were so stoked to have you on, because you can do, and actually I think it's the #1 podcast in all of the health and wellness ones right now, right? With Dr. Huberman. And he is brilliant and he is wonderful, and he can read research and science and interpret it and communicate it. And then he takes that science and those studies and that research and he creates action steps and strategies from it. And that improves people's lives. It clearly must be, because it's the #1 health and wellness podcast out there. Now, where I'm going with this, to use as an example, is science is wonderful and it's awesome. And Courtney's a nerd and I'm a nerd, and we love to read it. We love to interpret it and we love to apply it in our lives. But science can't hold a frickin' candle to real life experience, to learning from those pain points, from learning from those struggles, and learning from what works as well. So you'll love this, Courtney, and you are this. So last week we released our ADHD, today, as we're recording here, and this will obviously come out in a little while, but today our release was the deep dive episode I did about ADHD, which is real life experience for me. So that wasn't just a hour and 20 minutes of reading science and medical journals about ADHD. It was me sharing the hard lessons that ADHD has taught me and the wonderful lessons that ADHD has taught me. And there's more power to our stories and there's more power to our actions than there is to any of these research studies. And that same story you told there about Dr. Carolyn, right? Is that what it was? So, Dr. Carolyn, one of my longest standing homies here, Dr. Doug Neal, who will be coming on the podcast too. He's got actually almost 40 years of experience taking care of kiddos with ADHD now. And he's a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, which means he doesn't turn to drugs and medications and just try and shut it down. He literally works on he knows all about the nervous system. So he makes sure kids are getting adjusted. He knows all about diet and toxins. So he has an entire protocol and him and his team help with diet and nutrition. But about 10 years ago, he called me and he said, hey, I need you to know this when you're referring patients over. So he hit his 30th year in practice, which evidently after 30 years, you just get to make even more clear decisions based upon your experiences. And he said, I just need you to communicate to parents when you refer kiddos over. I will not see a child with ADHD if the parents don't agree to family counseling and care with me as well, because there's nothing I can do for the child if I can't first have the parents do it for themselves. Now, I love that you went here at the beginning, because this is the most empowering reality all of us can face. Okay. Yeah. It shouldn't feel a single bit judgmental or overwhelming. It's pretty natural if it would be like, oh crap, I'm 10 minutes in this podcast and I think Courtney and Dr. Tony are going to tell me to get my crap together, but I just came here to get my kids' stuff together. Like, I'm telling you we're telling you the cheat code to get your family together is to really lean into this. We're going to get into the strategies and the experiences with Courtney's kiddos too. But I love this. And this is exactly where I was hoping you were going, is to say, hey, you've leaned into this and you're still learning. That's the best. So are the ebook kiddos. Okay, 16, 14, 12, and 9. That's a lot of years added up. So you'd like to mathematically have that calculator kick it out and go, so they must know what they're doing as parents. Doesn't feel that way today, yesterday, or most of the days. But I do know that we are constantly working on it, just as you said. So let me pull some threads there from you, buddy.
Yeah.
What are 1, 2, or 3 of those experiences? I think there's a recent one, right? With schedules and gymnastics and all that with the girls. What are 1 or 2 or 3 real life experiences that maybe, actually, I really want to ask about these, that did not feel good, that you guys ran into a roadblock, you ran into stress or challenge with the kids and the family, and went, this is what's causing this is what has to change if we want it to change. What are some of those experiences you have gone through?
Yeah. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? Because like you said, science is great. Science isn't in your house though, when your kids are having an emotional breakdown. Science isn't going to come bail you out of a situation where you feel like you don't have the emotional capacity to have enough stability for your children when they're breaking down because you yourself are emotionally unstable. Like science can just prove, theories that we have, but in when it comes to real life, like, you are graced for whatever season that is in, but you have to, number one, take extreme ownership and responsibility. And I think that this is where there's a big miss, because nobody wants to take responsibility, right? I mean, these things are happening to me and look at my kids. Like, I don't know. I mean, gosh, this is just a really bad hand I've been dealt. And so we start thinking that everybody else owes us something because we're now experiencing something we didn't sign up for. When we start to take complete ownership of our life and say, I was graced for this, I was graced for these children, and this is their journey. Now I need to figure out how I can be the best parent and the strategies that I need to implement, the boundaries that I need to have inside my home, the things that I can control, so that I can have an intentional home life that breeds positivity, that breeds growth, that doesn't breed criticism, that doesn't breed victimization, because that's an easy mindset to pass down. This is how we see generational traumas. You see it in family members all the time. We want to think that generational trauma is, well, that person, their emotional woundedness of abandonment, just got passed down. Well, it did, but are you still living it? Because we want to just blame and look around and just think like, what a disaster, when we're actually making choices every single day. And I don't say this from a place of condemnation. I say this from a place of recent complete awareness, where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, how am I interfering with, like, in my mind, think about this. So many of us, we would never choose to have a tumultuous, turbulent household. Nobody wants to have a chaotic environment in their house. But how many people experience that all the time, that is the norm? Chaos is normalized because that's what we're used to. There is no awareness. And when there's not an awareness and there's no accountability, then we can't expect it to change. But what happens is we start getting bitter with all the people around us and thinking they're the reason, right? Yet we never want to look at and figure out what choices, what have we done to sign up for this that's created a household climate that is incredibly volatile, and now we've got all these little children that don't have the tools. They don't have the emotional maturity to navigate that. And we're upset with them because they're acting out. So the thing that I've realized recently, like just to kind of give you guys practical and just real life, right? Because this is what it is. I mean, I normally have children running around in the background and things like that. And so you would actually hear it on this podcast. They're at school. But I realized like this was probably 2 months ago, and I have three girls. So a 12-year-old girl, a 10-year-old girl, and then the baby is almost 2. So there's a wide range there. But my 10-year-old is definitely the one that struggles the most when it comes to her nervous system, right? So Sadie is, there is no middle ground. Whereas my older child, she can manage some stress. She doesn't sling too far, to the right or too far to the left. She can kind of hang out somewhere in the middle ground. Sadie can't find her shoes in the morning, and we may as well burn the whole house to the ground and just go dig a hole in the yard and jump in it. Like we are done, game over, not going to school. I can't, she does not recover, emotionally cannot recover. So the response, the trigger in the response, like do not match. Like you would just think, we'll just get a different pair of shoes. Like you've got like 6 pairs. Yeah. Nope. I was wearing the Converse, white high tops, and I cannot find them. And because I cannot find them, I am not going to school. The day is over. So
everything, the world is over. Not just the day is over, it's all over. Yeah.
Right. And so as a parent, I have a choice. I can sit here and think like, Sadie, you need more discipline, which I'm 1,000% a disciplinarian in the home. However, I also started to, and this wasn't until after the moment, because listen, no parent is figuring this out in the heat of a moment. So give yourself a moment to actually come down off of the emotions of the experience and then take an assessment. Okay.
But in fact, real quick, I'll sneak this in. You can't ever figure it out. Same as our kids. You can't figure out the whole solution without the mistakes, without the hard lessons. A child can be told the stove is hot. They're still placing their hand on it. And that's how they learn in bold that they did. When you run hot and you lose your cool in the moment, that's how you learn from that, right? You have to, we all wish it were different, but you have to make the mistakes, and then you have to give yourself grace, and then you have to be able to learn and move forward. The best of lessons are in the worst of moments. And it's a reality we all know and we all wish we're different, but it is what it is.
And that's so true for adults too. I think we really give ourselves a hard time. I know as a mom, like there's so many times I've missed the mark and I've yelled at my kids and I've said things that I'm just like, oh, I never should have said that. In the moment, I was really triggered. And I mean, there was nothing in the tank left. There was no patience, zero. I mean, I had bottomed out, but allowing yourself the space and the grace to say, God, I don't ever want to do that again. I don't ever want to be disrespectful. I don't ever want to treat my children the way that, like, you would never treat your children like that. You've never been harsh with me like that, and I deserve it. So, and I think that there is some level of like really being able to understand where some of our own insufficiencies are, so it allows for growth too. I mean, and I think that that's a huge testimony to your kids when they can really see their parents grow. I mean, you and I both know, like, my parents didn't have anything figured out. Like, I thought my childhood was great, but there's also, my parents were kids when they were raising the 4 of us, and, they did the best that they could. They definitely didn't hit the mark, but here I am as an adult. And I do feel like, man, I really appreciate that my parents never gave up. Like, they were always coming back and even apologizing or saying, you know what, I didn't handle that right. So it's a good opportunity for parents just to just to realize none of us are going to get it right, and your kids aren't either. But when you create emotional safety, and so this is one thing I want to hit on, because one of the things that you can do as a parent, whether you're a mom or a dad, is to create a household that has emotional stability and safety, meaning that your children can enter into the space and not feel like they have to make decisions or act in a way that avoids pain or triggers people around them, because they will start to develop habits where they avoid certain topics of conversation, or they avoid people, or they avoid situations that they deem threatening to their emotional health. And I have seen this deteriorate relationships so much, because the people in your home, they carry the weaponry to really hurt you. Nobody can hurt you more than the people that are in your house, because they know the vulnerable places. Yeah. They know the places of you that are the most sensitive. And when they are emotionally triggered and there aren't any boundaries around it, it can hurt you in a way that you really won't ever recover. Like, you will feel like, man, that one stung. Now I know I'll never go back to that conversation. I'll never bring that up again. I'll never approach them and ask for something when I know that they've had a phone call with so-and-so or had a bad day at work, because you feel that insecurity. And so I think for children, this is so important, because I know in my own kids, like, their nervous system, right? When they're outside of the house, they're busy, they're doing stuff. They're at school, they're at sports, they're doing things. But we have a hard time transitioning kids at home, right? We see home environments that are so intense, like not in a healthy way. And these kids can't fall asleep, and they're anxious and they're depressed, and they feel like, I mean, my own 10-year-old, and this is like, I'm just sharing this because I want people to understand, like, my life is not by any means like picture perfect, but my own 10-year-old within the last several months has come to me and said things to the effect of, like, I just don't enjoy my life. Like, I'm really unhappy, like really indicating that she is like emotionally at a place where she feels bankrupt. There's nothing worse as a mom to hear your child say that from a very broken place. And so you have to, at that point, realize, like, something has to give. If you are just running full steam with your life and just feel like, well, I need to band-aid these things together because we can't stop, and we can't, we got sports and family and responsibilities, like, you really, before the wheels start to fall off, you've got to realize, like, what is it? Where do I need to put the brakes on? And you may have to intercede. So for this instance, for my middle child, she was doing gymnastics at a very competitive level, and was 2 weeks before her state finals. I mean, we are at the end of the season. She's done really well. She's training every single day for hours and hours and hours. And after having that conversation in the car, this was one night, it was a Friday night, leaving gymnastics at 7:30 p.m. And she was just in tears. And she couldn't make sense of why she was even crying. She just said, I'm so unhappy. I do not enjoy my life. Like, I hate my life right now. And that crushed me. That crushed me. And maybe that's relatable for you. Maybe you have a child, maybe they haven't expressed that in those specific words, but you can just tell, like, they don't have that same zest for life. They're just not, they're just dull. It's like all of the fun and the joy has been sucked out. And I said, we have to put the pause on something. And I pulled her out of gymnastics. And she was a little bit upset about it. And she was like, I'm letting my team down. I said, I'll take care of it with your coaches and your team. But we need to address a bigger problem here. Like, your heart is more important. And I know you can do gymnastics. Everybody knows you can, but it's not what's healthy for you right now. And so my goal, because it's been several months now since that's happened, and really, like, I don't know that I have all the answers to this. I'm figuring it out in real time, like I mentioned earlier. But the thing that was so pivotal for me was, I need to be able to mentor and show her what it's like to have stability in the home, to have emotional security, and a place for her to start exploring, like, what is it that's going on? Why am I so depleted? And I will tell you, she is like a different child already. She has like, and here's the thing, like, I'm feeding my kids really well. They're getting herbs, they're getting worked on, they're getting chiropractic adjustments. We're doing all the stuff. But the one thing that I had to change was all of the obligations that were keeping her so busy and depleted. I had to pull it out to where she just came home from school and she had 4 hours. She even told me the first couple days, so what should I do with myself? And I said, why don't you get a book? And she did. Wouldn't you know, this child loves to read. And I never would have known that. And she'll go sit in her bed and she'll just read. And just in that one thing, it's like, it's now we're putting deposits in instead of withdraw after withdraw after withdraw. We're adding the deposits, and now her body's able to build resiliency. And now we celebrate it. Like if she reads 3 chapters of a book, I'm like, that's awesome. Tell me all about it. And it's now opened up. It's like she can regulate how she can actually put words to what she feels instead of just that complete bottomed out, broken tears.
And without that one realization, that tough, painful realization, that 2 created action, tough action, big action, not like, oh, suck it up, buttercup. And, not like, oh, we'll just supplement our way through this, or we'll just kind of hide our way through this. So significant action to make a significant life switch. 2, 3, create the space, the opportunity, neurologically, schedule wise, reality wise, to heal. And that was, that's the first thing that comes from that. And then once you get that space and once you get that healing and once Sadie's nervous system opens back up, it opens up to opportunities and experiences she never would have had if you guys just continued chugging along on the exhaustion train. And real quick, my guess is Sadie being 10, she's rocking the Wings of Fire series. Is that a great estimation? Any Wings of Fire books in your house yet?
No, we don't have those yet. She's I'm trying to think of the series, but they're actually gymnastics books. So it's like all these, so she's reading about gymnastics now.
Okay.
But the other thing too, I got her a new Bible, and I was like, Sadie,
awesome.
I said, why don't you start reading in Psalms? We'll start with like Psalms and Proverbs. And so she would read them. And then I was I got her a bunch of different highlighters, and I was like, beautiful. I want you just to highlight the words and the verses that really stand out to you. Cause there's a lot of great, like meaty truth, like one-liners, right? Like they're like the truth statements that everybody knows that can like pull you out of the pit. And so I was like, this is a formidable time. It is important that when you have a emotionally depleted person, that you don't just carve out the space, but that you deposit truth. And I thought, here is a window of opportunity for this child at 10 years old, for me to be reminding her as her mom that gymnastics does not define her. That is not her identity. It's what she did, but it's not who she is. And on top of that, if mom's validation isn't enough, you're going to get God's word that is going to remind you that you are a chosen daughter of the King, that you are loved, that you are anointed, that you are called and favored for great things. And I was like, she has to know, because her mindset at 10 years old is, I don't even like life. I don't know why I'm here. I hate this so much. So I am now working with a real spiritual enemy that would love for her to buy into that. So it's like, I have to, as her mom, like not only buffer her by creating space for her actual nervous system so that she can now process these emotions, but I now have to be very aware that there is a wide open hole, that if I do not make sure that she is getting exposed to truth, that hole will be filled with something. And this goes for every adult that's listening. I think that stripping down and simplifying your life is great. It creates margin, but you have to realize, just because you evicted something that's old, if you do not put something in there intentionally that is rooted in truth, culture and the world will give you something to fill it with. And it will only last for a certain period of time before you start feeling hollow again. And you'll wonder, what is it this time? Why am I so depressed? Do I need to go back? You go back to the drawing board. You have to harness truth. You have to anchor and root yourself in it. It has to be rooted. It cannot just be surface level. Otherwise it's gone, right? It gets snatched away. So I think that this was such an awareness for me, like so much so that I got rid of everything. I was like, literally ripped the freaking TVs off the wall. There are no voices. Like I became a control freak with voices in my household. I was like, there is not going to be Yeah.
That's where I wanted to pull. That's where I wanted to put that together, because what you started with there is the most, I think, the essential first part of the negative. You have to realize what we're up against. You have to be able to identify the obstacles to get to the achievements, to get to the goals of your healthy, resilient, empowered, happy, thriving, smiling, creative kiddos. You can't just, I wish it were awesome. I wish we could just draw up the good plan. You know what? The good analogy for this would be a good birth plan, right? A good natural birth plan. We make all sorts of content about natural birth. We interviewed Dr. Stu and Dr. Lindsay, and the best birth plans out there are the ones that first. So the first component of a good birth plan is to plan for everything to go swimmingly. Okay. Wonderfully. That's probably the first time I've used the word swimmingly on the podcast, but there it is. Okay. That everything's going to go just wonderfully awesome. You also need part 2 of that plan that goes when faced with challenge, what then? And our kids in this world, we are a generation of parents who is up against it. Now, so were our previous generations, but we are up against the perfect storm and have the extreme responsibility of awareness and access to more information like this podcast than ever before. So we can say on one hand, oh man, it's hard, we're up against it, and you're right. That gets you nowhere but further into the darkness and further into the storm and further into the stress and further into the medical world as well. But you also have access, which is, and we're preaching and teaching to the choir, you moms, you dads listening to this are the ones that want to become empowered. You want to learn those action steps. You want to learn from real life patient stories. It says, I'm in the storm right now, Courtney and Tony. How did you guys overcome it? Or better, if you really ask the question as to what we're really doing, how are you in process of overcoming it, right? And withstanding and going through it. And so real quick, I got to sneak this in because we have to know where the devil is. We have to know where the obstacle is. We have to know where the darkness and the evil is. And the medical system for sure loves if you were to continue to play the victim yourself and teach your children those principles as well. So there's principles of good and healthy and faith, and there is principles of fear and sickness as well. And the pediatrician by default is taught these. So they teach it to us. So we pass it down to our kids. And the worst place, there is no place in your life at all that will lead to a high quality of life where playing the victim is a good outcome, but it'll really cost you with health. We have to take radical responsibility, get to take radical responsibility for the health of our children. And you can't get to that without taking radical responsibility for yourself. So within this, I love the strategy. I love how you teach. I've heard you talk about this before with the Ancient Health, with the Health Institute podcast and your content on Instagram as well, where you talk about deposits and withdrawals. And being a sports guy and you know, that if there's one thing besides my family, my farm, and neurologically focused chiropractic that I love, it's that kind of de-stresses my nervous system. It's sports, right? And so sometimes I'll sneak those analogies in. But health is also really freaking simple. So we just got big and we got into it and right in the thick of it there. And now let's scale all the way down to simple. So you win with more points, with more deposits than you have withdrawals or than you have defense, right? And so we always teach it that the key is you draw up your plan not to win every single day. Because you know what? There'll still be a rough morning here or there for Sadie. Sadie in our house is named Elena. Okay. We'll get these two nut jobs together and they will just be besties and it'll be awesome. Right. And they can have their white Converses. They can have all their space for creative play and reading. And they are wonderful when they do. We learned the exact same lesson core with Elena because Christina and I are hard chargers and our other kiddos, actually the 3 out of the 4 other Ebo kiddos are hardwired. They're comfortable going fast as well. They don't get escalated. They can make the transitions, you know, quite easily. That's just how God made them. That's their wiring. That's not Elena's, right? That's not number 3. And so for her, there definitely needs to be a slower pace with more space. But what's awesome is when given that slow pace and given that space, that kid's creative ingenuity and beauty is unmatched, right? Because of that. And so now I wanted to, I love that because we have that too with the differences, because now we're learning these principles, and this is what we wanted to chat about today. We're learning these principles as, let's kind of call it a 30,000 foot view for our home. Like you said, we're going to establish these boundaries. We're going to establish these rules, and then we're going to create all sorts of opportunities for these good deposits. We're going to get outside. We're going to eat clean food. We're going to get adjusted. We are going to line up our deposits every single week. We're not going to have perfect days, but what we do with our family is we try and win the week. I do this with my own productivity schedule. It's the number one productivity hack I ever learned, is that trying to win the day is dumb. There, that's said the very Tony Ebo way right there, because you're going to bomb out some days, okay? Yep. It's just not going to work one day. And if you have set this up where, like, I'm not happy if I didn't cold plunge, if I didn't meditate, if I didn't get in the garden, if I didn't get to bed on time, if you are that dependent upon every day being wonderful, you will, it's going to add up in the negative direction. So what I'm saying right now, you're like, this is not very revolutionary. Actually, it is, because the simplest of stuff is the most impactful of stuff. And so if you take your health plan for your family and you draw it out over a week, you have so much more space to give yourself grace. And you run the scoreboard not at the end of every single day, because that'll drive you crazy. But I'm telling you, just this one little cheat of the calendar to go, how did we do this week? Can we go from Sunday to Sunday and make sure that we found and created and fostered and took action on the space to build our relationship with Jesus, to strengthen our faith, to be in the Word, to learn better and grow closer to Him? That will make your life incredible. Second, did we get enough outside time? Did we get enough? No phones, no iPads, no freaking electronics. Actually, we moved to a farm, so I'm shipping Courtney a goat for this reason, right? The goat will make sure, we're going out there, right? So Pablo's coming your way. Pablo is the lead goat of the Ebo Posse, all right? And so you get outside. Did we get adjusted? Did we get our clean food? Did we get our supplements? So we just run, and I'm running on one now because I love this lesson so much. We run on a point system, knowing challenges are coming, knowing tough times are coming, knowing growth spurts and illnesses, and this week is standardized, knowing stress is coming. Every single week, we're going to outpoint it proactively so we don't get annihilated by it in the moment. It's one of my favorite things to teach. Now, where I want to take you next is, and you're already right in the thick of it with awesomely, thank you for the vulnerability of sharing that story, because we can all relate. Son of a gun, can we all relate? And I'll sneak this in just for a second. You know what Sadie with gymnastics was? It's a mom or a dad who keeps going back to the job they hate, that depletes them, that exhausts them, and they do it because they feel like they have to. And then they wonder why their kids go down a road of have to just by despising this. And so, guys, take this lesson, not just for your Sadies and your Elenas, but yourself. Are you totally depleted because you continue to go down the road that will only bring about more depletion?
Yes.
So real quick with our kids, or not necessarily real quick, I think this is essential. And you shared it with me ahead of this. So I was like, you got to talk about this on here, buddy. Now there's 3 of them. And they're not all the same. So these wonderful principles, like, here's my plan for my kids. This is going to be how we're going to be healthy. This is how we're going to be resilient. This is how we're going to be happy. And you apply said plan. Imagine everybody out there, you got a nice little PDF, right? Somebody put it through Canva. It's really nice looking, and it's your game plan. And you're like, this game plan for Addison works wonderfully. Now that same PDF you've printed to make sure that kid number 1 is happy and healthy and well, it is awfully orchestrated for kid number 2. It doesn't work. And you can probably hear the real life emotion in my voice where it's like, oh man. So this is, though, our responsibility to learn the language of stress and resilience and happiness and character in each of our kids individually. So long setup for you here, homie. Yeah. But these are lessons you're learning too, right? That the 3 different girls are 3 different girls, and run that out for us, because that's huge. There's a lot of life improvement in that.
Yeah, this is so good. And I want to add something too, because I love the scoreboard analogy. And what I would challenge you to think about is that if you are running the scoreboard in your life and household right now based off of producing or checking boxes off of a list every single day, and that's the measure of success, you will then that will translate to your children as being, well, when I complete X, Y, and Z, or when I show up, or when the circumstances are all aligned in such a way, then I know that I'm being productive. Then I know I can be happy with my situation. Then I can feel accomplished, that I can feel valued. What you have to do is change the scoreboard. You have to change the values of the metrics. I mean, get rid of it. Like, I can't describe how much this changed my life. I would sit here and I would tell you that even the day I became a mom, that the most important thing to me at that time was, I want to be the best mom for these children. However, if you looked at the things that I was spending my time on every day, it was not serving my children all the time. So in my mind, I thought, well, I'm doing all the right things. I got them in the preschool and the swim and the all these different things. But I wasn't creating space to just be there with them, because to me, that was kind of painful. I was not the mom that like wanted to sit on the ground and play dolls. Like, I just wanted to have an organized, structured schedule and be able to move them through. But what I realized is that their only framework for success was, did we do everything on mom's agenda every day? Yeah. So you have to learn how to change the metrics and the values. And I can tell you that the biggest, oh my gosh, this is like the probably the only thing that is going to rewrite all of this for you is by limiting and saying no to so many things. Like, no has to just be the default. It's like, if you get a yes, it's like, whoa, okay, we're going to do that. Like, the yeses should be so infrequent that you're a little surprised when you do say the yes, because there has to be a lot of no's, because there are a million different options of things you could be doing at any given point in time. But when you create margin in your week, and this is what I value, how much time was I able to carve out of my day today to be present, to not actually have that moment planned? Because when I have those moments and I value them, those are the times that I'm creative. Those are the times that I have grace for my children and think, you know what? I'm actually going to go spend time. I'm going to go take her to get a Bible. I'm going to sit down and read with her. I never would do that if every single moment of my day was accounted for. I wouldn't even have the bandwidth, nor would I even it would never cross my mind. So now the value is on how much margin can I build in my day to protect what it is that I'm trying to build. Because I have to have windows of time every single day where I can meditate on where I want our family to go, what I want for my children, which means I get the opportunity to pray for them. I get to cover them in prayer. I get to pick them up from school and I get to talk to them about their day. I get to sit down and make meals with them and teach them about the food that we're eating. If I don't have margin for that, then it's not going to show up. There's no evidence for that in your life. It's not valuable. So you can say, well, I want to have family dinners every night. Okay. If that's valuable, then say no to 6 other things so that you can create an experience for that. And I don't say this from a place of being harsh, because I am so driven. This has been the hardest thing for me to unlearn. It is so much. I heard a pastor one time, and he said, your unlearning is tied to your healing. And I was like, you're right. I cannot heal without unlearning the patterns and the habits and the behaviors and choices that I have operated from. Those are systems I have operated from for decades. And I am frustrated because I have the same system and I have the same result, and I'm trying and I'm praying and I'm wishing I had a different result, but I'm still stuck with the same system. You don't actually have a problem with just the behavioral stuff and, just the overall climate of your household. You have a problem with your habits. That's the problem. If we could get you to change the habits, then we get to change the outcomes. We get to see the fruit of changing that. So parenting different children, this was a long segue into this, but I think, isn't it crazy that you can have the same environment and you have so many different personalities. It's just unbelievable to me that you've got the same genetic pool and the same environment, and you've got completely radically different personalities and wirings. But the thing is, you get to steward them all.
You really, when you slow down, and that's what we're asking you to do right now in this moment with us as podcast, 2 parents in process. When you see this, that blows your mind. I think you actually really see God's design, because God doesn't and he knows so much more than us. The last thing we want is everybody to be the same, even within a family. And so while this can have its moments, does have its moments of frustration with the different patterns and the different personalities and the different things in our kiddos, when you fall in love with it, it's the greatest part of the family dynamic.
100%. And honestly, like, your children are created for purpose. They have oil on their life. Like, they are designed, they were wrapped, their purpose was there, and then they were wrapped in flesh to carry it.
Yeah.
So when you start to think about that and you look at them, you think, okay, they were designed. There is something in them that is so unique that it required them to look different in this way. How do I steward it? How do I foster? How do I create growth? How do I help cultivate those good seeds that are there? And you have to do that for each child. But listen, if God gave them to you, he graced you for them. So if you think you're frustrated, then go to your maker and be like, Lord, what in me? Where am I self-sabotaging? Maybe like, where am I creating issues with this? Because I believe that you have equipped me to do this. So if I'm really struggling, what do I need to give up? Like, what am I trying to control that is producing the frustration in my life? And I had to purge a lot of stuff. Like, guys, it's a yard sale. It's an emotional yard sale at my house.
It's an estate sale. Let's be honest.
It's an estate sale.
Yeah, it's 3 generations. Yeah, this
So many.
farm family with these habits and these characters have lived on this farm for 125 years, and we're selling it all. We're taking the barn down, the crib down, the bins down, and we're going to rebuild the new ones. Yeah, for sure.
This is where we're at, and it's taken me 38 years to finally start to realize some of this. But at this point now, I'm like, well, in my own strength, do not have the ability to steward and manage multiple children with different skill sets, different proclivities, different challenges, and they're a moving target, right? They're not staying 12, they grow, they keep changing. So it's like, I feel like I finally get one of them figured out, and then I turn around and the other one's got a whole different set of situations and issues we got to deal with. And I'm like, man, I thought we just got that one dialed in. So, you're constantly pivoting and changing.
And you may have at 9:08 a.m., but it's now 9:09 a.m. And yeah, it changed for sure.
It just changes. Yeah. But I'll tell you, you know what? Have conversation with your kids if they're old enough. Like, just spend individual time with them. If you even have one car ride and it's 10 minutes to a soccer field, just turn the music off and just sit there. My daughter, my 12-year-old does soccer. She was so confused because I decided, and I didn't say anything, but I was like, I'm just going to start driving the car with like no music, no podcast, no nothing, and just see what happens. And she was like, Mom, this is so weird. Like, it's so quiet. And I was like, I know, that's on purpose. She was like, so what do we do? And I was like, well, we can talk. But how crazy is it that that's not the norm? They're used to background noise. It doesn't matter if we're listening to it. It's just that there's always background noise. Again, going back to the nervous system, you're always sending signals, right? So you may think that there's no impact to your physiology, but I can tell you for sure that science can tell you there is. Yeah. So you're just not used to it, but it's constant noise. Just roll down the windows and like let the kids' hair be like flying around. They'll start laughing. Like, it's just like simple things like that. But it goes a long way. And then you just get to see behind the curtain a little bit of your children, a different side of them. So this is what I would say to that. When you start to take advantage of those small moments, every single one counts. Yeah. You become sensitive to other things that are off way before they manifest into a larger problem. So I can tell now when Ella's having a little bit of an off day, nobody else would know because the kid is always smiling. She is the child that walks in a room and always brightens it. Doesn't matter if she's having a bad day, but I can tell you when there's something bothering her. Yeah. It's subtle, but I can pick up on it because my ability to be sensitive to her emotions is now way more dialed in. It's like being insulin resistant, right? Like, the pancreas is like, okay, insulin. And like the receptors are like, I can't hear you. Totally. More insulin. That's what happens with the noise in our life. You've got to shut it down so that you can hear it. If you're praying and you feel like you don't understand and can't discern God's voice, it's because he's not going to compete with everything else. Yeah. You can hear God's voice. You just better choose him over everything else. You've got to shut it down. So become like I'm like now, like it's like Fort Knox, and it's not in a bad way. I am very sensitive to every external influence of noise, whether it's a person, whether it's a social engagement and family members. I protect downtime like it is the most valuable thing. You'll have to pry it out of my dead, lifeless fingers, because I realize that's the key. Like that's it. We don't, that's the one thing that people don't have, and our health gets worse. And I think, what is it that we keep marginalizing? It's our time.
It's our time, and it's our space. This is insane. All right, everyone, this is Courtney. You are a blessing 100-fold over, because it's wild. So God has blessed us with this podcast. He has called us to it. He has crafted us to it. I may have intentionally ignored his voice for a little bit, because I was like, because I was caught in the season that he first started. I always make the joke, he sends me these emails, right? And maybe they're not bullet pointed down, but I definitely have fostered space in my life to continue to, and the farm is part of that, right? I've joked with you about this, Courtney, and it's a joke, but it's real life for me. God talks to me most clear when I'm lawn mowing. So there may be the background noise of the lawnmower, but something about that vibration, that noise is just beautiful, and it just opens up access up there. Where am I going with this? This is where the plan for the PX Talks podcast PX Talks platform. So that's our website with our articles and our social, and then this podcast grew out of it. And I want to bring this to real life strategies for families. And so for me, I was doing other things that other people said were right for me in that season. So I promise you this, those emails, God had been sending them to me for years, and I hadn't been opening them. And I hadn't been reading them, and I hadn't therefore been following his instructions because of my busyness, because of my choice to chase, right? And so what I did first is I chose to slow down. I chose to create space in my life. And it was everything we're talking about right now. It was really hard. And Courtney said that, and I'm saying it again. It was the antithesis of what everybody else does. It was going against the grain in every way you can go against the grain. All these achievements that I had set in front of myself, if I do this and then that, that's going to be the path to the happiest life. And that path God has blessed us. We've been having a blast and letting it rip the whole time. But there is levels of joy and fulfillment, and there's levels of space, and there's only a certain season and amount of time to create this space before your kiddos are gone and not there in your household where your influence is there. So all these things were convalescing together for me, and I chose to listen, and I chose to follow. I lived this life we're talking about on this podcast today, just like Courtney has recently, and I slowed down, and it created that space for this podcast. And what I wanted to do then with the podcast is I actually still delayed it by another 12 months. You can ask Dr. Morgan and John and everybody who was just gung ho. They're like, dude, you got the voice for this. You say literally a bunch. Let's just get you out there and literally do it. Sorry, bad joke. And, talk about subluxation and the nervous system. And I can do that. I can get all prefrontal cortexy and hippocampus and, let's go, right? Nerd to nerd. There's not that many others nerds out there, but the podcast is primarily based upon real life stories and experiences and parents. And what we ask people to do is to come on here and share what they've really learned, changed, and improved by life. Not by blog, not by book, and not by class, and not by research study, right? And so that is what you have done today. And I need to say it one more time with unequivocal clarity, because with the perfect storm, on a lot of the other episodes, I talk all about the science of neurologically focused chiropractic and how the real root cause of our kids' illness is stress on their nervous system and dysregulation. And I got to go on your podcast with you and Dr. Motley and talk about this. And I know even for you, when I was teaching that stuff, some of that stuff, you were like, whoa, there it is.
Yeah. So
all right, here's where I'm going. That works. What I can teach you guys, and anybody listening right now, if you don't know that from Adam, we'll scroll up, listen to the podcast where I do nerd out, and I'll teach you the science that neurologically focused chiropractic adjustments work to get all sorts of chronic health and wildly tough conditions that you wouldn't ever think of chiropractic to work on, we get them better. But Courtney, do you know the 2%? And I keep stats like a nerd like none other. We have patients fill out outcome assessments and are they actually getting better? Are they getting results? And we track this stuff. And then we have functional objective neurological testing to say, are they actually getting better? Where am I going with this? I'm going with the central thread of today's lesson. The 2 to 3% of kids that even our world-renowned clinical protocols don't get better. The 2 to 3% of kids who are not only getting the right adjustments on the right schedule, but they live clean. They eat perfectly. They take the supplements. They take the oils. They go through everything perfectly and they still don't heal, are the kids who don't have the space to heal. The number one thing that I have seen, parents ask me, probably about 80% of reported findings as soon as we go through the chiropractic care plan. So reported findings is when I sit down knee to knee. It happened twice yesterday. I had 2 reports. Wow. Both sets of parents asked me this question. We lay out the entire chiropractic care plan and what we're going to do to be able to get their kid better. And it's the coolest question ever because parents are gung-ho, ready to go. I'm getting my kid better. I'm a warrior. I'm an advocate. I've found the truth. I've had to unlearn a ton to get here.
Yeah.
And now I'm ready to get there. And they all ask, what else can we do to help? And that answer is never what people think it is, Courtney. They think it's another diet change. Yeah. They think it's another supplement. They think it's another herb. They think it's neurofeedback. They think it's list goes on and on. It's called your Instagram scroll. That's where the list is of all the things you're supposed to do to get your kid's nervous system to heal and regulate. And we can send you, we're rounding third base on this one. The most important thing that we really, really communicate to our families is your child's nervous system needs space to heal. So my answer to that question is it's not an addition to the list of awesome things you're already doing. Yeah. They're going to heal via subtraction. So this is the principle of deposits via subtractions. This is the principle of healing by doing less, by creating space, because that's how God designed a child to develop. Yeah. He didn't design our kids to have a freaking, full throttle school schedule, regular sports schedule, travel sports schedule, side hustle schedule, right? And all of these other things. And so and I want to add just one more component to this as take-home strategies, because that's what we promise you with this podcast too. Through these stories, you'll get real, like right now, you could have a pen and a paper and you could just write these words down. Create more space. Yeah. And then these characters and this character building and this resilience and this empowerment, I'll give you just some evil tips for this, and it's working. I'll share a story with you when we get done here, Courtney, about just some incredible, just some challenges that we were just going through with our oldest that we knew. We prayed, we created space, we slowed down, we listened, we discussed with her, and literally just this last couple of days. And I knew this, I knew this miracle was coming. I knew the good was coming, right? Because when you're in the thick of the storm, if you've been through enough of them, the sun shines on the other side, and you can be patient and get to it. So anyways, that just happened. And here's how it did. Every single day when we drive the kids to school, when we get about a couple miles out, I turn off the radio entirely and I make them go through the EBLE core values. We've got 7 of them. Okay. And I make them each go around in the truck and I have them say a EBLE character core value. And most importantly, share how are they going to use it that day? How are they going to actually apply it? So it's not just, rogue memorization. It's okay. That's something that is going to make your life, but most importantly, make the lives of others around you better. How are you going to use that today? So we're preparing for them to have the habits, right, ahead of time. And then every single week, Christina and I make sure we carve out at least a 20-minute walk, or sometimes we'll do a full date, with just one of the kiddos individually. And then we do exactly as Courtney asked or taught us here today. We're just quiet. There's no agenda to that walk or to that date or to that session or that drive. There's just space for them to chat and them to talk and them to share and us to listen. And through that active, intentional listening, the direction by with which you want to guide your kids actually comes to you. What I have learned, and sorry for taking up so much time to recap all this and go through it, but what I have learned is that when I go in with a plan and I know what's best, and here's what we're going to do, and here's how it's going to work. Now, there's some of that, obviously, in parenting, right? With discipline and those things, but that sends my kids sideways. That I can't go in guns a-blazing and dictate everything. Parenting isn't a dictatorship. Parenting is a partnership with your kiddos, and really, really, really being the leader and being the guide and being the authority. But the best authority and the best guiding and the best leadership starts with active, intentional listening. And you need the space for all the kids and each child individually to create that. So right there in my 5-minute recap, I didn't say anything new. I very intentionally just said everything Courtney taught us today, just one more time, because one of my least favorite things about a lot of other podcasts is they will jam for an hour or 2 hours and it's about 200 different things. And you're like, I loved all of that, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. I don't know if there was one take-home golden thread lesson, and there definitely was in this one. So, Courtney, as you look forward, as you look ahead, we're recording with you right now, homie, in the spring. So summer's coming. School's going to be out. You know, you're going to have even more space for the girls. What are you excited about right now? Like, what's new and intriguing and exciting and working for you when it comes to your family's health? Take us home with kind of looking ahead as to what are the cool things you're working on next.
Yeah, you know, it's a lot in line with what we've talked about. I'm in a season where I feel like the more I say no, the more I decide to cut bait with, the faster I feel like I can run. And I'm seeing the downstream effects with the children. And so I'm very much just trying to be intentional, so intentional with the time that I have, and that it is serving a greater purpose. Because like what you mentioned earlier about the podcast, like if you're listening to this, you are getting this experience, this podcast and this conversation because of Dr. Ebel's obedience. And so if you start to think my obedience today is not just for me, but it is for someone else's deliverance, you will start carrying that purpose with a much higher level of integrity and intentionality. Like it is now a real value, because what I have is meant to set somebody else free. It's meant to support somebody else's growth. And when you see that for yourself, and you also see that your kids carry that on their lives too, you'll be able to make decisions for them where before there was too much confusion and it's hard to understand. Should I buy this? Can I budget for that? Can I, does it fit in the rhythm? Is it too far to get? Like it, all of a sudden all of the things that are not meant to be there fall off, and you don't have to wrestle with the decision. So I'm just looking forward to where God is leading and what he's building and growing, because I feel like I've gotten in that place. I hit that Damascus Road moment where I felt like the Lord was really like, Courtney, are you really going to do what I'm calling you to do? Because you are deferring obedience to somebody else's deliverance. I need to use your mouth. I need to use your skills that I put in you. And I finally let it all go. And I feel like now, I've cut out so much in my day, and I'm like, Lord, that's yours. And so now the runway is his, and I fully expect miracles. Because that's the God that we serve. Like he will do exceedingly and abundantly more, all that you can ask or imagine. You got to put him in the driver's seat and put him king on every part of your life, not just the king of Sundays and Wednesday night Bible study. He's got to lord over every part of your life. And let me tell you, I am so expectant, so excited to see where he's leading me. And I have like little deposits of what I feel like he's exposing for what the future will hold. But it's just being obedient today, because today it's my kids. Today it's this podcast. Today it's pick up at school later. And so those are the areas I want to show up and be able to do the things that I feel like the Holy Spirit is calling me into. But I live with the hope of the future of what he's creating, what he's cultivating, what he's developing today to serve where he's taking me tomorrow. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
And I cannot believe our blessing of having your gifting here on this podcast. I am not just saying that. I don't know what to say to close this one down. I think the hardest part of a podcast, we drove about this ahead of time, is the opener is so stinking hard, right? That's why, and then the closing is 10 times harder, because it's like, how do we end this? There is just so much life transformation and changing. And we chose to talk about something that is not the easy road. We chose to talk about something that is definitely the against the grain road. And why do you think the hard things have the most fulfillment, the most enjoyment? Because the process, as Courtney started off sharing with us, like, hey, she's in process and really in this amazing place with that. That's where the best life is lived. There isn't, the outcome is the outcome. You know, it's a hot moment of, you know, you get to that point and it's a hot second, and then what? Life goes on. So how are you going to live it in the moments? How are you going to live it in the days? How are you going to live it in the months and in the years and in the transitions that your kids are going to go through? And I'll tell you this, when you live it this way, real intentional, really with God leading the way, really with plenty of space in your schedule and in your nervous system to fully, not kind of sort of fully experience it, guess what your kids will choose? They will choose health. They will follow your health habits
100%.
And they won't be new. It won't be odd to go to the chiropractor. It will be foundational. It won't be weird to eat clean and organic and make your own food. It will be secondhand. It will be the norm, the new normal for them to be wildly, vibrantly healthy. You know what else this generation of kids needs in addition to great neurophysiological health? They need fortitude. They need resilience. They need to become empowered. They need to be listened to. They need to be connected to. They need to be in community, and they need a family. And so our goal of all of this, and I know it's Courtney's too, is that when our kids grow up and go to school or start their business or do whatever it is they do, they never leave the family. There is no distance that is, you know, maybe geographically, but this connection and this relationship that you can foster right now with intentional, empowered parenting that we jammed right into, all the way into with this podcast, it will build a lifelong, incredible relationship for your whole family. And if we all finally slow down, give ourselves a little space with today's podcast episode, that's what you want. That's what we all want. Like, that's the dream outcome for our children. Vibrant health and an incredible lifelong relationship with them. And so let's lead them there by prioritizing our health, our nervous system, our space, so that we can, one, show them, and two, have it for them as well. You will see everything in the show notes. You have got to, must do. So here's the list. Okay, now we're back to the list. These are the things you must absolutely do. Just kidding. All right. You have got to continue to jam with us. If you haven't already, you know, downloaded, subscribe, do all the little buttons on your phone that we would love for you to do with the Experience Miracles podcast. Please do that. We would love a review if this is transforming and changing your life and your child's life. We'd love you to go to the website, read the articles, nerd out. I may have thrown a little bit of a side shot at science today, but I actually really love science and teaching it. So go there, jam there, go to our YouTube page, and then follow Organic Blondie and the Health Institute on Instagram, and you will love the content. You will learn all about the incredible principles you did today and peptides. Okay. There's going to be a lot of posting about peptides on Courtney's. Last question before I let you go. Handstand push-ups. You got them yet or not?
Oh gosh, I wish I could say I do. I mean, they're like, you know, they're not all the way there. Questionable. All right. But you know, I'm doing handstands on the reg, so I'm building that upper body strength. So,
all right, boss lady. What
I need more peptides, apparently.
Yeah, more peptides, more parasympathetic adjustments. Decrease that stress in your traps in your shoulders. You know, talk to your chiro, get that done. Get those handstand push-ups knocked out. Report back, and we'll jam again. All right.
Will do. Thanks so much for having me.
Love you. That was amazing. You're amazing. Thank you so very much. We'll do this again. All right. Thanks, buddy.
Sounds good.